Dr. Amanda Clark stared at the computer screen in her lab aboard the research vessel Meridian. The numbers made no sense. She had run the human DNA analysis 3 times already, and each time the results came back the same. Something was wrong with the genetic scanner, or something was very wrong with human DNA. Amanda pushed her chair back and rubbed her tired eyes. She had been working for 12 hours straight, processing genetic samples from the newest species. To join the Galactic Council, humans were supposed to be simple, just another young race that had barely figured out faster-than-light travel. Their DNA should have been easy to catalog and file away like all the others. But human DNA was different. Very different. Amanda pulled up the comparison charts on her secondary monitor. Every known species in the galaxy had certain genetic markers. These markers showed how long they had been evolving, what their limitations were, and most importantly, what they could never become. The markers were like built-in safety switches that kept species from changing too fast or becoming too dangerous. Humans had no such markers. In fact, human DNA had sections that looked like they were designed to do the opposite. Instead of limiting change, these sections seemed designed to encourage it, to speed it up, to make humans adapt faster than should be possible. Amanda walked over to the sample storage unit and pulled out vial number 7429. Inside was a small amount of blood from a human volunteer named Jack Peters. According to his file, Jack was a completely normal human. He worked as a cargo handler on Earth and had no special training or abilities. He was as average as humans got, but his DNA told a different story. Amanda placed the vial back in storage and returned to her workstation. She opened a new analysis program and began running deeper scans. What she found made her hands shake. Hidden in what other species called junk DNA, humans carried dormant genetic sequences. These sequences were inactive, sleeping, but they were there. And they were complex. More complex than anything Amanda had ever seen. She ran a projection program to see what would happen if these sequences became active. The computer worked for 20 minutes before displaying the results. Amanda stared at the screen and felt her heart racing. If these sequences activated, humans would be able to adapt to almost any environment within days instead of thousands of years. They would be able to survive radiation that killed other species. They would heal from injuries that would be permanent for others. They might even be able to change their own biology at will. Amanda checked the time. It was late, but this discovery was too important to wait. She opened a communication channel to Dr. Maya Rodriguez on the Council Research Station. Maya was a xenohistorian who specialized in ancient civilizations. If anyone would know what this meant, it would be her. Communication took several minutes to connect across the vast distance of space. When Maya's face appeared on the screen, she looked tired but alert. "Amanda, what's so urgent that you're calling at this hour?" Maya asked. "I need you to run a search through the precursor databases," Amanda said. "Look for any references to genetic sequences that match what I'm about to send you." Amanda transmitted the human DNA data to Maya's station. She watched Maya's expression change from tired annoyance to intense focus as the data appeared on her screen. "These sequences," Maya said slowly, "they look familiar. Give me a few minutes to run the search." Amanda waited, watching Maya work. At her console, the minutes stretched on. Finally, Maya looked back at the screen, and her face was pale. "Amanda," Maya said quietly, "these sequences match fragments found in precursor ruins, not just similar matches." "Exact matches. What does that mean?" Amanda asked, though she was beginning to fear she already knew. The precursors left warnings about a species they called the Inheritors, a young race that seemed harmless at first, but had the ability to evolve without limits. According to the records, the inheritors destroyed the last great galactic civilization. Amanda felt cold. How long ago? 50,000 years, Maya replied. The precursors spent their final centuries trying to contain the inheritors, but it was too late. The last records speak of the inheritors spreading across the galaxy, changing, becoming something beyond what any species had achieved before. Amanda looked at the human DNA data still displayed on her screen. Maya, what if humans are not just similar to the inheritors? What if they are the inheritors? Before Maya could answer, an alarm sounded in Amanda's lab. Her communication system was receiving an urgent message marked with the highest priority codes. Amanda opened the message and felt her blood turn to ice. The message was from the Galactic Council's Biological Security Division. All human genetic material was to be immediately classified and transferred to Maximum Security Vault Omega 7. No exceptions. No delays. No questions. Amanda looked back at Maya's image on the screen. Did you get a message too? Maya nodded grimly. All research on human genetics is being shut down. They want every sample, every scan, every piece of data transferred to the vault within the next 6 hours. They know, Amanda whispered. Or they suspect, Maya replied. Either way, this discovery dies here. We never found these sequences. We never made this connection. Do you understand? Amanda nodded, but her mind was racing. If the Council was moving this fast to contain information about human genetics, it meant they were scared. Very scared. She began transferring her data to the secure channels as ordered, but she kept copies hidden in her personal files. This was too important to simply bury and forget. As Amanda worked, she thought about the humans she had met during her research. They seemed so normal, so harmless. Jack Peters with his simple job and quiet life. Dr. Lisa Harper, the marine biologist who had volunteered blood samples for xenobiology studies. Commander Jake Morrison, who commanded the human escort ship that had brought the samples to the Meridian. None of them seemed like the descendants of a species that had once threatened the entire galaxy. But then again, according to Maya's research, the inheritors had seemed harmless too. Amanda finished the data transfer and leaned back. In her chair, the lab felt different now, charged with the weight of what she had discovered. Somewhere in the galaxy, humans were going about their daily lives, unaware that their DNA carried the potential to reshape the universe. And somewhere else, the Galactic Council was deciding what to do about it. Amanda closed her eyes and wondered if she had just discovered the most important secret in galactic history, or if she had just signed humanity's death warrant. Professor Ben Carter brushed the ancient dust from the stone tablet with careful strokes of his soft brush. The hieroglyphs carved into the dark stone were unlike anything he had seen in 20 years of studying precursor ruins. These symbols seemed to pulse with urgency, as if the beings who had carved them were trying to scream a warning across 50,000 years of silence. Ben was alone on the dead world of Kepler 442b, working in the ruins of what had once been a great precursor city. The archaeological team had left him here with supplies for 3 months while they investigated other sites in the system. He preferred working alone anyway. The silence helped him think, and these ruins had secrets that demanded his full attention. The tablet he was cleaning had been buried under layers of debris in what appeared to be the city's central archive. Finding it had taken weeks of careful excavation, but Ben knew it was important. The placement, the protective covering, the quality of the stone, everything suggested this was a record the precursors had desperately wanted to preserve. As Ben worked, the hieroglyphs became clearer. The precursor language was complex, but he had been studying it for most of his career. The symbols told a story that made his hands tremble as he translated. The tablet spoke of a species called the Inheritors. According to the text, they had appeared in precursor space as young explorers much like humanity, had appeared in council space. They seemed peaceful and curious, eager to learn from older civilizations. The precursors had welcomed them, just as the council had welcomed humans, but the inheritors had been different. They changed, not over thousands of years like normal evolution, but within generations, sometimes within single lifetimes. They adapted to new environments faster than should have been possible. They survived conditions that killed other species. They learned and grew and became something more than what they had started as. Ben set down his brush and activated his recording device. The translation was too important to risk losing. He spoke slowly and clearly as he read the ancient text. The inheritors came to us as children come to teachers, Ben translated. They asked questions and learned our ways. We thought them harmless, even endearing in their eagerness. We did not see the danger until it was too late. Ben paused the recording and examined the next section of hieroglyphs. The symbols here were carved deeper, as if the precursor who had made them was pressing harder with each stroke. They began to change on the frontier worlds. Ben continued reading. First, it was small things, better reflexes, faster healing, resistance to diseases that had killed their companions. We thought it was natural adaptation. We were wrong. The tablet described how the inheritors spread through precursor space, taking on roles as explorers, researchers, and eventually leaders. Wherever they went, they changed to fit their environment. Desert worlds made them able to survive without water for weeks. Ice worlds gave them resistance to cold that defied biology. High radiation systems left them not only unharmed, but somehow strengthened. Ben felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cold air of the dead world. The description sounded familiar. Too familiar. He continued translating, and the tablet's message became more desperate. The precursors had tried to study the inheritors, to understand how they were changing so quickly. What they found terrified them. Their genetic structure was unlike anything in nature, Ben read, where other species had barriers that prevented runaway evolution. The inheritors had accelerators. Their DNA was designed not to limit change, but to encourage it. They were evolution without breaks, adaptation without end. The tablet described the final years of the precursor civilization. The inheritors had not conquered through war or violence. They had simply outgrown the need for the old ways. They had become something beyond what the precursors could understand or control. In the end, the great precursor civilization had faded away, not destroyed, but simply left behind as the inheritors evolved into something else entirely. Ben stopped recording and sat back on his heels. His mind was racing with implications he did not want to consider. He activated his long-range communicator and sent an urgent message to Dr. Maya Rodriguez at the Council Research Station. Maya, I need you to run a genetic comparison, Ben said. Into the communicator. I'm sending you precursor genetic fragments from the ruins here. Compare them to any recent species that have joined the Council, especially humans. Ben attached the genetic data he had extracted from organic traces in the ruins and transmitted the message. Then he returned to the tablet, hoping he had misunderstood something. But the more he translated, the clearer the message became. The precursors had left this tablet as a warning. They had known that someday the inheritors might return, or that something like them might appear again. Hours later, Ben's communicator chimed with Maya's response. Her voice sounded shaken when she spoke. Ben, the genetic fragments you sent match human DNA with 97.3% accuracy. The similarities are too precise to be coincidental. Ben closed his eyes and felt the weight of 50,000 years of history pressing down on him. Maya, there's more. The tablet describes how the inheritors were contained in their final phase. The precursors tried to quarantine them, but it was too late. The evolutionary process had already begun. What evolutionary process? Maya asked. Ben looked at the final section of the tablet, where the hieroglyphs were carved so deep they had nearly cut through the stone. The awakening. The tablet says that once the inheritors reached a certain population threshold and spread to enough worlds, their dormant abilities would begin to activate. Not in all of them at first, but in enough to start the cascade. How many is enough? Maya's voice was barely a whisper. Ben translated the numbers carefully. According to this, the process begins when the inheritors number in the billions and have established colonies on more than 100 worlds. The communicator was silent for a long moment. When Maya spoke again, her voice was hollow with realization. Ben, humans number over 12 billion, and they have colonies on more than 300 worlds. Ben stared at the ancient tablet, at the desperate warning carved by a dying civilization. The precursors had tried to tell the future about the inheritors. They had left this message hoping that someday someone would find it and understand. But understanding had come too late. If the tablet was right, the awakening had already begun. Council Speaker Zeth Kari of the Altarian Empire stood before the assembled representatives of 47 galactic civilizations. The great chamber of the Galactic Council had never held a session marked with such extreme secrecy. Even the recording systems had been disabled. What was about to be discussed could never be allowed to reach the general population of any world. Zeth Kari's forearms moved in the traditional gesture of grave importance as he addressed the council. His blue-scaled face showed the strain of the decision he was about to announce. Honored representatives, Zeth Kari began, his voice carrying the weight of authority built over centuries of leadership. We have called this emergency session to discuss a threat to galactic stability that surpasses anything we have faced in recorded history. The chamber fell silent. Representatives from dozens of species leaned forward in their seats. The Draknari war chiefs gripped their ceremonial weapons. The ethereal voidlings dimmed their natural luminescence. Even the ancient crystalline collective focused their shared consciousness on the speaker's words. 3 days ago, our archaeological and biological research teams made a discovery that connects recent genetic analysis with ancient precursor warnings. The evidence is undeniable. The species we know as humanity are not what they appear to be. Zeth Kari activated the chamber's holographic display system. Images of human DNA appeared in the air above the assembled representatives, rotating slowly, so all could see the complex genetic structures. Humans are the descendants of the species the precursors called the inheritors, the same species that brought about the collapse of the last great galactic civilization 50,000 years ago. The chamber erupted in shocked voices and clicking sounds as different species processed this information. The Draknari representative, General Vorthik, slammed his clawed fist on his speaking platform. Impossible, Vorthik growled. The humans are weak. They have barely mastered faster than light travel. They cannot be the same species that destroyed the precursors. Dr. Elena Foster, one of only 3 humans present in the chamber, felt her heart racing as she listened to the discussion. As a geneticist working for the Council's Biological Research Division, she had been called to provide expert testimony. But hearing her own species described as descendants of galactic destroyers made her hands shake. Zeth single quotes Carey gestured for silence and continued. Dr. Foster, please present your findings to the Council. Elena stood slowly and activated her data pad. Her voice was steady despite her fear as she began to explain what her team had discovered. Honored representatives, human DNA contains genetic sequences that we initially classified as non-functional. We now know these sequences are not inactive by accident. They are suppressed by a complex regulatory system that keeps them dormant. Elena displayed her genetic analysis for the Council to see. These dormant sequences contain instructions for rapid adaptation. enhanced healing, improved cognitive function, and what we can only describe as controlled evolution. When activated, these sequences would allow humans to adapt to new environments within days rather than millennia. The Etherian representative, a being of pure energy contained within a crystalline shell, spoke with a voice like singing crystals. What could activate these sequences? Environmental stress, radiation exposure, extreme survival situations, and certain chemical compounds, Elena replied. But most concerning is that the activation appears to be spreading. Once triggered, in one individual, it can be passed to offspring and may even spread to other humans through close contact. The chamber fell silent again as the implications sank in. Finally, the Voidling representative spoke, its words appearing as text on translation screens since Voidlings communicated through quantum fluctuations. How many humans show signs of awakening? Elena checked her datapad. Our surveillance indicates approximately 12,000 humans across 43 colonies show evidence of sequence activation. The number is growing exponentially. General. Vorthix stood again, his massive frame towering over his speaking platform. Then we eliminate them now, before they become a threat. The Draknari Armada can sterilize every human world within a standard month. No, said the Etherian representative firmly. We are not the precursors. We will not commit genocide based on fear of what might happen. Council Speaker Zethkari raised one of his 4 hands for order. The decision is not simple. We have reviewed the precursor records extensively. The inheritors did not conquer through violence. They simply evolved beyond the need for the existing order. The precursors faded away as the inheritors grew into something the galaxy could not contain. Dr. Maya Rodriguez, attending the session as a Xena historical consultant, stood to address the council. The precursor records indicate that the inheritors were not evil. They were simply too successful at adaptation. They outgrew their origins and became something that could not coexist with other species. Elena felt compelled to speak again. Honored representatives, I have worked with humans for 5 years. They show remarkable cooperation and restraint. Perhaps they can control their evolution in ways the inheritors could not. Perhaps, Zethkari replied. But can we risk the fate of 47 civilizations on perhaps? The debate continued for hours. Some representatives argued for immediate containment of all humans to their home system. Others suggested careful monitoring and controlled integration. The Draknari continued to push for elimination, while the Etherians advocated for complete transparency and cooperation with humanity. Finally, Zethkari called for a formal vote. The chamber's voting system activated, and each representative cast their decision in private. The results appeared on the main display as colored lights representing each possible choice. When the count was complete, no single option had gained a majority. The council was split almost evenly between those who wanted to contain humanity, those who wanted to eliminate the threat, and those who believed cooperation was possible. Given the divided nature of this vote, Zethkari announced, we will implement a compromise solution. Humanity will be given one chance to prove they can control their evolutionary awakening. All human genetic material will remain locked in Maximum Security Vault Omega-7 as evidence of their true nature. If humans can demonstrate restraint and cooperation as their abilities manifest, they will be granted full membership in the Galactic Council. The speaker paused, and his voice grew cold. However, if humans show signs of following the same path as the inheritors, they will be quarantined to their home system permanently. The safety of the galaxy must come first. Elena felt a mixture of relief and terror. Humanity had been given a chance, but it was a test they might not even know they were taking. As the council session ended and representatives began filing out of the chamber, she wondered if she should find a way to warn her species about what they were truly capable of becoming. The vote had been cast. Now the galaxy would wait to see if humanity could succeed where the inheritors had failed, or if history would repeat itself with even more devastating consequences. Dr. Rachel Wells stared at the genetic sequencer in her underground laboratory on Mars. The machine hummed quietly as it analyzed her own blood sample for the third time that week. Each test showed the same results. The dormant sequences in her DNA were becoming active. Rachel had been working in secret for 2 months, ever since she had intercepted classified communications about Project Containment. As one of Earth's leading geneticists, she had access to equipment and resources that most humans could only dream of. She had used that access to discover the truth about her own species. The awakening was happening faster than anyone realized. Rachel's fingers moved across the holographic display, examining the genetic changes occurring in her own cells. 3 weeks ago, she had been exposed to high levels of cosmic radiation during a solar storm. Instead of making her sick, the radiation had triggered something in her DNA, something that had been waiting for 50,000 years. Her reflexes were faster now. Her mind processed information more quickly. When she cut herself in a lab last week, the wound had healed completely within hours. She was becoming something more than human, and she was not alone. Rachel had been secretly testing other humans who worked in high-stress environments. Deep space miners, colony pioneers, military personnel stationed on dangerous worlds. Nearly 30% showed signs of genetic activation. The number grew every day. Across the solar system, Captain Nick Turner was facing his own crisis of conscience. He stood in the observation deck of the Earth Defense Station, watching supply ships move between Earth and the Moon. Each ship carried human colonists heading to frontier worlds, unaware that they might be carrying the seeds of galactic transformation. Nick had been present during the classified briefing where Earth's military leadership learned about the Council's decision. Humanity was being tested, but they did not know it. The test was simple in concept, but terrifying in reality. If humans could control their evolutionary awakening, they would be accepted into the galactic community. If they could not, they would be quarantined forever. The problem was that no one knew how to control something they barely understood. Nick activated his secure communication system and contacted his old friend Commander Jake Morrison, who was currently stationed on the frontier world of New Austin. Jake's voice came through clearly, despite the vast distance. "Nick, good to hear from you," Jake said, "though I suspect this is not a social call. Jake, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest. Have you noticed anything different about your crew lately? Anything unusual?" There was a long pause before Jake answered. "Funny you should ask. 3 of my people survived. An atmospheric processor explosion last week that should have killed them instantly. My medic says their injuries healed faster than anything she has seen before. And my navigator plotted a course through an asteroid field that should have been impossible for human reflexes." Nick felt his heart sink. The awakening was happening on frontier worlds, just as the precursor records had predicted. "Jake, we need to talk. In person. Can you get to Earth?" "That might be difficult," Jake replied. "My ship has been flagged for special monitoring by Council observers. They are watching us very closely." Nick understood. The Council was monitoring human activities throughout the galaxy, looking for signs that the awakening was spreading beyond their ability to contain. Meanwhile, on the Council research station, Dr. Elena Foster was working frantically to decode the regulatory systems that kept human abilities dormant. As one of the only humans with full access to the genetic data locked in Vault Omega-7, she felt the weight of her species' future on her shoulders. Elena had been analyzing the dormant sequences for weeks, trying to understand how they might be controlled or suppressed. What she found was both encouraging and terrifying. The sequences could be controlled, but only through conscious effort and training. Humans who were aware of their changing abilities could learn to regulate them, to keep them from spiraling out of control. But humans who were unaware of what was happening to them would continue to evolve without restraint. Elena opened a secure channel to Dr. Rachel Wells on Mars. The two women had been collaborating secretly, sharing data and theories about human genetic awakening. "Rachel, I have found something important," Elena said when the connection was established. "The control mechanisms are there, but they require conscious activation. Humans need to know what is happening to them if they are going to control it." Rachel's image appeared on Elena's screen, and Elena could see the changes in her colleague's appearance. Rachel's eyes seemed brighter, more alert. Her movements were more precise, more controlled. "Elena, I have been thinking the same thing," Rachel replied. "But if we tell humans what they are capable of becoming, some of them will embrace it completely. They will not want to hold back." This was the heart of the dilemma that was tearing apart human leadership across the galaxy. Do they tell humanity the truth about their genetic heritage and risk some humans choosing to become like the inheritors? Or do they keep the secret and hope that unconscious evolution can somehow be contained? On Earth, the debate was raging in the highest levels of government. President Maria Santos had called an emergency meeting of the Global Security Council. The room was filled with leaders who were struggling with an impossible decision. "The Galactic Council has given us a test we did not ask for," President Santos said to the assembled leaders. "They want to see if we can control our evolution. But how can we control something if we do not tell our people it exists?" General Carl Hayes, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, stood to address the group. "Madam President, my analysis of the situation is clear. We have two choices. We can tell humanity the truth and risk panic and division, or we can try to manage this awakening in secret and hope we can contain it." "And if we cannot contain it?" asked Dr. Liu Chun, Earth's chief science advisor. "Then the Council will quarantine us to this solar system forever," the general replied. "We will never be allowed to spread beyond our own star." The debate continued through the night. Some leaders argued for complete transparency, believing that humanity deserved to know the truth about their own nature. Others pushed for secrecy, fearing that knowledge of their abilities would lead some humans to embrace unlimited evolution. As dawn broke over Earth, President Santos made her decision. "We will tell them," she announced. "Humanity has always been at its best when we face challenges together, with full knowledge of what we are up against. We will trust our people to make the right choice." But even as the decision was made, reports were coming in from across the galaxy of humans, displaying abilities that seemed impossible. The awakening was accelerating, and time was running out. To prove that humanity could control their evolutionary destiny. 6 months after President Santos announced the truth to humanity, the galaxy watched in fascination and terror as the first generation of truly awakened humans emerged across dozens of worlds. Danny Clark wiped the sweat from his forehead as he stood in the ruins of what had been Atmosphere Processor Station 7 on the mining world of Kepler-Prime. The explosion should have killed him instantly. The blast had thrown him 300 meters through the air and buried him under tons of twisted metal and rock. His fellow miners had given up searching for survivors after the first day, but Danny had lived. He had crawled out of the wreckage after 72 hours, not just alive, but somehow stronger than before. The radiation that filled the area after the explosion had no effect on him. The toxic gases that made other humans need breathing masks felt like fresh air in his lungs. When the rescue teams found him walking calmly through the devastation, they could not believe what they were seeing. Dr. Susan Price examined Danny in the medical facility on Kepler-Prime, running every test she could think of. His DNA showed massive activation of previously dormant sequences. His cells were processing energy more efficiently than should be possible. His immune system had adapted to neutralize toxins that had never existed on Earth. "How do you feel?" Susan asked Danny as she reviewed his test results. Danny considered the question carefully. "Different," he said finally. "Like I was asleep my whole life and just woke up. I can see things more clearly now. Understand things that never made sense before. It is like my brain is working at full capacity for the first time." Susan nodded and made notes in her medical file. She had been seeing similar cases across the outer colonies. Humans exposed to extreme conditions were not just surviving, they were thriving. And they were passing their abilities to their children. Halfway across the galaxy, deep space pilot Ryan Scott was experiencing his own awakening. His cargo ship had been caught in a cosmic storm that destroyed every instrument on board. The radiation levels should have been lethal. The gravitational distortions should have torn his ship apart. Instead, Ryan had navigated through the storm using senses he had never known he possessed. He could feel the flow of gravity around massive objects. He could sense electromagnetic fields that interfered with his equipment. When he emerged from the storm 3 days later, he could no longer explain how he had done what he did. The awakening was not limited to those in dangerous professions. On the peaceful colony world of New Eden, teacher Kelly Brooks was discovering that her students were learning faster than ever before. Children who had been struggling with basic concepts were suddenly grasping advanced mathematics and science with ease. Kelly had tested positive for genetic activation herself, but her abilities seemed focused on understanding and communication, rather than physical enhancement. She could sense when her students were confused or frustrated before they even spoke. She could explain complex ideas in ways that seemed to bypass normal learning entirely. But not all humans were embracing their awakening with Kelly's gentle approach. On the frontier world of Titan's Edge, explorer Captain Troy Lewis was pushing the boundaries of what his enhanced abilities could accomplish. He had stopped wearing environmental suits on worlds that should have killed him within minutes. He had survived falls that should have shattered every bone in his body. He had gone days without food or water in environments where other humans would have died within hours. Troy's followers called themselves the Unbound. They believed that humanity's awakening was not something to be controlled or limited, but something to be celebrated and pushed to its ultimate potential. They established settlements on worlds that were considered uninhabitable, proving that awakened humans could survive anywhere. The emergence of the Unbound created a deep division within humanity. Dr. Kelly Brooks became the leader of what became known as the Restraint Movement. She argued that humans needed to use their abilities responsibly, to prove to the Galactic Council that they could be trusted with their evolutionary gifts. "We are not the same species that destroyed the precursors," Kelly said in broadcasts that reached human colonies throughout the galaxy. "We have the wisdom and restraint that the inheritors lacked. We can choose to evolve responsibly." But Troy Lewis and the Unbound had a different vision. "Why should we limit ourselves to make aliens comfortable?" Troy asked in his own broadcasts. "We are becoming something magnificent, something that can survive and thrive anywhere in the universe. This is our birthright, and we should embrace it fully." The debate between the two movements reached Earth's government and the Galactic Council at the same time. President Santos found herself trying to balance the competing visions of humanity's future, while the Council watched and judged every decision. Dr. Elena Foster, still working with the Council's research division, provided regular reports on humanity's progress. Her reports painted a complex picture of a species struggling to control abilities that grew stronger each day. "The awakening is accelerating beyond our projections," Elena reported to Council Speaker Zethkari. "But humans are showing remarkable self-awareness about the process. Many are actively working to control their abilities rather than let them run wild." Zethkari studied Alana's data carefully. And the others? Those who call themselves the Unbound? They represent less than 5% of awakened humans, Helena replied. But their influence is growing. Some humans see them as heroes who embrace humanity's true potential. Others see them as dangerous extremists who risk humanity's future. In the galaxy, the final test came when the Council sent observation teams to human colonies throughout the galaxy. They wanted to see firsthand how humanity was managing their awakening. What they found surprised even the most optimistic Council members. On most worlds, awakened humans were using their abilities to help their communities. Enhanced miners worked longer and safer shifts to extract resources. Awakened doctors could diagnose illnesses that had previously been undetectable. Enhanced engineers designed more efficient systems for everything from agriculture to space travel. But the observers also found signs that worried them. Some humans were growing beyond what their communities could understand or accept. Children born to awakened parents showed abilities that surpassed even their enhanced relatives. And despite all efforts at restraint, the awakening continued to spread. Dr. Amanda Clark, the scientist who had first discovered humanity's true nature, made a final log entry as she prepared to retire from active research. She had spent the last year studying the awakening process and had come to a conclusion that both terrified and amazed her. The human genetic samples remain locked in Maximum Security Vault Omega 7. Amanda recorded, "But I now understand that the vault was never meant to contain humanity's evolution. It was meant to preserve evidence of what we once were, before we became something the galaxy had never seen before." Amanda looked out at the stars visible from her laboratory window. Somewhere among those distant points of light, humans were building impossible cities on worlds that should have killed them. They were solving problems that had stumped galactic civilization for millennia. They were becoming something new. The age of humanity's childhood among the stars is ending. Amanda continued her recording. What comes next will determine whether the galaxy grows with us or is left behind as we evolve into something beyond current understanding. The precursors feared the inheritors because they could not control them. The question now is whether we can control ourselves. As Amanda finished her final log entry, reports continued to arrive from across the galaxy. The first generation of truly awakened humans was reaching maturity, and their children showed abilities that defied every scientific model. The galaxy held its breath, waiting to see whether humanity would prove worthy of the gift they had been given, or whether the ancient warnings about the inheritors would prove prophetic once again. The awakening could no longer be stopped. Only question that remained was what humanity would choose to become.